Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Ronald Reagan. This is Citadelium, Episode 6, and I'm your host, Yuri Degaya. Today's episode is titled The Children of the Citadel, and I'll explain why. You see, when we want to build a solid citadel, a citadel that actually lasts for generations and generations, it has to be built on a very solid foundation. The base of the citadel has to be very strong, like glue. And then, what does it mean to build it on a solid foundation? Well, it means that the community has to be very, very strong. It has to be very tight, and it has to be built on very strong principles, the principles that are shared by absolutely everyone in the citadel. And of course, family is the most important part of a solid foundation. It is the most important part of a strong community. The family is the nucleus of this community. It follows then that it is very important to take care of the children of the citadel because they are part of the family, obviously, and they are the future of the citadel. And to some extent, I will speak from experience because I'm a parent myself. And although I'm quite a new parent, I became a parent only a year and a half ago, I think I have gathered a bit of experience in this domain, and I have also read some sources. And obviously, as we go, I will get more experience. I am also planning to have more and more children in the future, as many as possible, so that, of course, it will be a lot more fun, not just for us, but for the children themselves. Having siblings, I think, is pretty important. And it is my recommendation as well to anybody who doesn't have children yet for some reason, just to think about it again, because if you want to build something for the future, there is nothing that has a lower time preference than having children, because children are the future of your family unit, and you will really open up your mind a little bit. You will see the long-term perspective of what you're doing. You will see why you're doing things, and you will see who will actually inherit all the things that you're doing, who will inherit your legacy. So let's talk about raising children. What are the basics of raising a child in your family? Well, let's start with the parents themselves. First, of course, to start a family, you have to have a union of two partners, and those partners are normally man and woman. And this, I think, is very important for children as well. Let me explain to you a little bit about the actual natural law. And one of the important laws of nature is that everything in nature, everything in the world is both masculine and feminine. Even the ancients talked about it, that everything has both the male and female energies in them. But us human beings are physical beings, and of course we are separated in the physical world into two different sexes, male and female. So obviously one potentiality, so to speak, dominates the male, and the other one dominates the female of the human species. So, for example, a male, of course, is more masculine, it's more rough, it's stronger, while the female is usually more feminine, softer, more grounded, and more physical, more sensual as well. Now, when you talk about children, they have to have both parents. They have to have a father and a mother, because while Yes, they are born only as one sex, one of the two, male or female. They can be really affected by whom they are being raised. So, for example, if they are raised by both father and a mother, then they are being raised in a very balanced way. And father, of course, will show the more masculine and rough and strong side of him to the child, and then the mother will show the more feminine and more soft and more caring side of her. So the baby will actually realize, okay, this is what it means to be more masculine, and this is what it means to be more feminine. And of course, in families that are broken, these things lack, because let's imagine a family in which there is only a single mother raising a boy. So, what can a single mother give to the boy in terms of masculinity and roughness? Very, very little, because she is feminine, she's caring, she's protective, she's sensual. So, the boy, without, in that environment, the boy that is being raised without a father will also essentially mimic the features of the mother most of the time, even though he will be socializing with other boys out there, but he will mimic a lot of the features of the mother and will grow most likely more feminine than he could be, and the other way around as well. So if you have a more family in which there's only a father and no mother, the masculine and the rough nature of the family will prevail in the children's character too. Another thing that a lot of families neglect these days is to have siblings for their kids. First of all, it is a lot more fun to have siblings for your children, even when they are at home. Yes, of course, they can go out and socialize with other kids out there, but the home environment is where they spend a lot of time, and I think it's very important for them to have someone at their side to play with and to learn from. And of course, in some countries, this is mandated by law that you cannot have more than one child. For example, in China, which of course is a very unnatural law, and places like this are better avoided altogether. Then another reason to have siblings is that first of all, the elder children, they will grow a sense of responsibility because they have to care for the younger ones, and the younger ones, they will have to learn some things from the elders, because this is how they are. The elders are more experienced, even if they are just elder by a couple of years. They still have 2 years of experience, more than the younger ones, and they have a lot to teach. And of course, it's a good thing for parents too, because parents can very often just delegate some tasks, more or less important, to the elder children, so that they can take some rest. As you know, parenting is not always a cakewalk. Another important aspect of the family is the grandparents. So the parents of the parents must also be present, if not full time, then at least sometimes. Children must have this conception that their parents also have parents, and they must realize when they see their grandparents that their own parents will one day become like their grandparents. They will grow old and they will grow needy, but they will also grow more caring for everybody else. So this is an important part of a bigger family, because a bigger family means more socialization, and the socialization happens with different ages, group ages, which makes it a lot more interesting, more fun. And of course, grandparents have this wisdom of the age. They can always share their wisdom with the younger ones, and they can often tell interesting tales of the lives that they lived. So the kids like to spend their time with grandparents very often. Sometimes you hear stories, of course, that kids don't really like their grandparents, but that is a normal and natural part of a family relationship. It makes things more diverse and it makes things more interesting in the long run. So, what are some of the basic things about parenting that I can say based on my experience and based on my knowledge that I learned some different sources? First of all, there exist many methods and styles for parenting. There are many recommendations out there. There's lots of mommy blogs and daddy blogs out there and books written on the topic. So I'm not gonna dive into the actual methodologies of raising children here. You can find them all by yourself, and some of them are good, some of them are not so good. What uh, I'm trying to do is I'm just learning as I go, being a parent, and of course I will get better, as I mentioned, with more experience and with more children. But I think there are some basic and natural rules that we can all follow so that the child is raised in a more appropriate environment. What are these rules? Well, from the top of my head, I can tell you about some of them. Obviously, this list is not comprehensive. This is something that I can come up with right now. And the first one, I think, is let them make mistakes. Let them fall, let them hurt themselves, let them do stupid things. They have to learn from their own experience, and I think that overprotection is not always good. And of course, in a healthy family, we have a mother and a father, and usually the father is less protective while the mother is more protective. And that's why a balance here is very important. When we have two parents, then we find this point of balance where the father just says, "Hey, just leave him be," and the mother says, "No, but I have to take care of him," and eventually, neither actually prevails because there is a balance in the family. So if you have only a single mother family, then there's too much overprotection, and if you have a single father family, there's too much maybe carelessness, I would say. So then children are also not very conscious. They're not as conscious and aware as adults. So, of course, parents have to make decisions for the children. Children cannot make serious decisions in their life, no matter what the media and so-called academics are trying to tell you. So they cannot make decisions in terms of what they want to eat. They cannot make decisions in terms of what they want to even study on the base level, and obviously they can't and must not make any decisions in terms of their gender and things like that, which is completely and utterly ridiculous. So when kids start growing up a little bit, of course, they will have some kind of preferences and leanings. But at the same time, there are basic skills that I think are very important for them to learn. There are skills and arts that will help greatly if learned by children, and some of them I will list here right now. The first one, I think, is obviously a skill of social interactions. And as I mentioned before in the family section of the show, I said that a larger family provides for more social interaction within that family. So siblings of different ages and grandparents and aunts and uncles, they all help in building this skill of social interaction with different age categories of people. But of course, they have to go out in the world and interact with individuals outside of the family, which is great because it builds their not just their social status, so to say, but also their skill in terms of interacting with people that they don't actually have to deal with on a daily basis, but that are more like a random people. So they learn to act in the moment, they learn to improvise in social interactions. Another thing, another skill that they have to learn is, of course, critical thinking. And Having kids play various games like logic games is very important because they have to learn how to think critically in the world that actually does not encourage you to think critically. So if you want to raise children that actually can think for themselves, they have to learn that skill from the very beginning, so that no matter how much propaganda and pressure there is to suppress their critical thinking faculties, they will withstand that pressure, and they will actually learn to analyze that and see that they are being affected and pressured into not thinking critically, and they will see through these attempts, and they will still stick to their critical thinking faculties. I think this is very important, and it will help them throughout their lives. And there are some skills that are really helpful throughout their lives as well, that the ancients thought were extremely helpful, because nailing these skills, maybe not extremely professionally, but at least to some degree, helps you understand how the world works, helps you understand the laws of nature, and how nature works, so that you can actually navigate the nature better, and you being part of that nature, you can actually use it to your advantage. So these are normally referred to as the seven liberal arts, and the seven liberal arts are usually divided into two categories: the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium consists of grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric, and the quadrivium consists of arithmetic, music, geometry, and astronomy. I'm not going to cover all of them right now. I'll just say that you can Google the seven liberal arts. It's a pretty famous term out there, and I think it is sad that right now these arts and skills are not taught in schools mandatorily, because a lot of these skills, for example, music or even astronomy sometimes, or dialectic and rhetoric, they are extracurricular activities these days. You have to just sign up for them separately, and they're not part of the curriculum in school. But before, in ancient times, in Middle Ages even, a lot of these were part of mandatory teaching. So children grow up understanding the world around them a lot better. And of course, some of them were affected by religious teachings too, which is not that bad either. So I would highly recommend that to some degree you enroll your children into studying these disciplines, and they will understand how the world works better. From my side, for example, I will definitely look into doing that with my children, and it doesn't have to be anything super difficult. They don't have to become great orators or ingenious mathematicians. They just have to understand the very basics of how things work in mathematically, how the world is arranged. And what can be more fun than to have your children actually play some musical instruments and know music very well? They can entertain you when you are old. Also, there exist some gender-specific activities that you need to teach your children, and let's start with boys. With boys, I think it's very important to teach them leadership skills. And by leadership skills, I don't mean that they have to be leaders absolutely everywhere, because as we know, the world is uneven, and the majority of people are followers, and there's only few people who are actually leaders. But you don't have to teach them to be leaders out there everywhere. They follow in the outside world, that's completely fine. But inside the family, in familial matters, they have to learn to be leaders, because at some point they will have to take over the father's position, the head of family position, and they will have to lead their family. Discipline is another thing that the boys have to learn, and you can teach them disciplined through all kinds of routines. You can start just with games from the very early age, and you can raise them by essentially telling them that routines are very important in your life, because routines create habits, and habits are what make you more efficient and effective at things. And this you may or may not like, but I think that some kind of military style training can be also very beneficial for boys. And it doesn't have to be the army itself. You don't have to send them to the actual government army, which can actually send them to fight some war that you don't really care about, and you don't want your son to die in a war fought for some political reasons. However, there exist private military schools, private military academies where you can send your son for a year or two, so he can learn a lot about the military art, and the discipline of routines, of schedules, and the discipline of actually following an authority. Because if you learn how to follow authority, how to follow leaders, you can also become a better leader yourself. And of course, in a healthy body lives a healthy spirit. So sports is very, very important for boys. You have to just convince them to do something. It doesn't matter what, as long as they are active and they move. So look into sports. This is very important. The last thing I want to mention that is applicable for boys is that a father has to teach the boy the importance of fatherhood, because at some point the father will have to pass the legacy of the family onto the boy or onto multiple boys, and they have to learn the reason behind why it's important to have to be a father and to have a healthy family, so that the family, their future families, are not broken apart, so that they have healthy families that have a father and a mother, and they don't break away from those. As for girls, I think women would know better than me. I could just mention some skills like family affairs, because you have to teach a girl the importance of having a strong family, just like you have to teach the boy the same thing. But from the girl's side, it is important to learn what it's like to be a mother. And that's why you can see girls like to play with dolls, because they imagine the dolls are their babies, or that the dolls are themselves having babies, right? So girls have to learn how to take care of family affairs, and I think it is also very important that the girls learn how to take care of the household. At the end of the day, it is quite natural that the male in the family is the one who just goes out in the world and essentially conquers the world, and then brings all the loot, so to speak, from the world back into the household. And the wife, the female, is the one responsible for essentially redistributing all that, all the goodies, and taking care of the household and taking care of the kids. So this is very important, and it doesn't have to be all her. For example, if you manage to have a wealthy family, then she may hire some help, like babysitters or house cleaners. It doesn't matter, but it is still it is still her responsibility to actually do that and take care of the household and family matters. So these are some of the things that I think are important to do when you raise your children. But there are also some things that are important not to do. And among these, I would like to stress the no exposure rule, which means that you should really reduce exposure to, or completely eliminate exposure to some of the things, so that they are not affected. As we all know, we are all products of our environment, and in a healthy family, there is a healthy environment for the children, but you cannot completely shield children from the outside world. They will still be exposed to its to certain things that influence their behavior, but you can limit exposure to those things. One of those things is mass media. You have to teach them about the world yourself and tell them how the mainstream media actually works so that they learn to critically think even when watching mainstream media. Ideally, they shouldn't really watch it. Maybe you should even get rid of your TV and not watch TV like I do. But there is the internet, and probably by the time your kids are already walking and talking, we'll have even better technology that will be pervading every aspect of our lives, and they will have a screen in front of them constantly, whether it will be an internet screen from your computer, your phone, or something even worse like a contact lens that just gives you access to all the data. But you have to really limit exposure to mass media because, as you all know, mass media is 99% negative news, negative articles. Everything is negative in the world, and children do not and cannot be raised in such an environment. They have to think that the world is good because it is good, and it is not what the mass media portrays it to be. So coming from that, of course, is no exposure to the internet and social media. It is very difficult to avoid such exposure because it's always there, and I can already see a lot of kids, even my kid wants to hide, playing with the iPad, for example, because there's a bunch of applications for kids there where they can draw, they can solve some puzzles and things like that, but they actually get used to the screen, and eventually that will lead to the use of the internet and social media. So you cannot really avoid it completely, but you have to explain to children how these things affect their behavior, how they are actually addictive, and how most people who live fully and constantly in these social media platforms are not really what they are in real life. So how all of this is pretty much fake. You have to explain all those things to them so that they think critically before they see anything, and they don't take everything at face value. So they take everything they see on the screen with a grain of salt. Another big thing that comes both from the TV screen, from newspapers, and of course the biggest media for it is the internet, is pornography. And unfortunately right now it's absolutely everywhere. It's very difficult to avoid, even with all kind of child blockers and any protective measures. It's very difficult to avoid. So you just have to explain to the children that this is not for them. They cannot see it because pornography obviously degenerates both the body and the mind, and it really doesn't help you in your life. But as we know, when children grow up, and especially in their teens, they are full of hormones, and they're full of rebellious spirit. So they will be exposed to this stuff. So you just have to be ready that it cannot be completely avoided, but you just have to keep explaining to them what it actually does to them on a physiological and psychological level, so that they are not completely blind to what's happening to them during that stage of life. And in terms of the physical body, you have to limit exposure to bad nutrition, which means you have to actually provide them with good nutrition. And just feed your kids properly right from the start. Don't give them all those sweets. The sugar high is definitely not going to help them. And a lot of the time, when you hear and see these hyperactive kids that are running around and cannot be controlled by their parents, this is sugar. It is sugar, and it's not much else. And especially things like when you have in school things like ADHD. Kids are kids, and all kids are different. Some of them are calmer, some of them are a little more hyper, but bad food, bad nutrition especially sugar, definitely adds to their inability to control themselves. And things like vegetable oils and all the processed foods and carbs, they of course affect the kids' bodies. So when those different illnesses that are normal to those ages come, the kids' immune system is much weaker than it can be, and it cannot really fight those diseases very well. So they really have a bad time with those diseases. So feed them well, lots of meat, lots of fats, lots of protein, and they will be fine. In conclusion, I just want to say a few things. First of all, you cannot really predict how your children will turn out when they grow up, but you can, and it is within your power to do the basic work to build a solid foundation for their character. So you really have to pay attention to this, and if you really work so hard that you have absolutely no time, especially both parents, when you have no time for your kids, you have to really rethink your life, because your children are like sponges. They absorb absolutely everything they see and hear, and if you are not around as parents, then they will be absorbing everything they see and hear from the outside world, and you will regret because the way your children will turn out will not be the way you wanted them to be, and you'll be looking for someone to blame, but there is nowhere to look for that person. It is actually you. And another thing I want to conclude with is that the parasites, the malicious element in our society, they are after your children. They really want to get them from the very beginning, because they fully realize that a child's mind is the best mind to mold. It is the most plastic, it is the most open to suggestions. This is when they want to take your children and actually indoctrinate them with what they think is the correct way. So in a lot of countries actually right now, children are not only covertly the property of the state, but are pretty overtly the property of the state. If you take Germany, for example, there it is illegal to homeschool your children. They have to go to a public school. This is obviously a violation of your rights as a parent, because you have to be able to choose, but the state claims that they know better than you, the parent, what is good for your children. And there are other things in those countries, like it is illegal not to vaccinate your children, even if you choose not to, because it is a health risk for the remainder of the population and the remaining children out there, as they say. That's why they have to force inject all kinds of stuff into the body of your children, whether you want it or not, and you have no grounds to object on. And obviously, if you decide for some reason not to follow those edicts by the government, they will take away your children and they will place them in special facilities in which they will be educated according to the government agenda. And you will be just read of your parent rights. And this is a really sad story. And I think when it comes to this, it is not in every country. It's not like this. But when it comes to this in your country, and if it comes to this, I suggest that you just get out of that country. And I understand that there may be some patriotic feelings about your country, but if you feel like there is no way to fight this machine, then better get out of there, because the future of your children depends on you, and you don't want to look your children in the eyes and answer the question, well, daddy and mommy, what did you do to protect me when these rules came? And you will have no answer. You just all you can say is that you were a coward to resist these rules. And if you cannot really resist them, I'm not saying just grab the arms and go, on a rampage. You escape them. At some point, We hope that there will be enough reluctance and resistance to these rules, that these rules will be overturned or even completely cancelled. So you will have a nice life with your children and you will raise them the way you want them to do. To raise, but at this point, unfortunately, things are not looking very good in some countries, and the state, the cancerous apparatus of compulsion and coercion is just growing bigger and bigger and wants to do with absolutely every aspect of your life. Children are a big part of your life and they want them. This is it for today. I hope it gave you a little bit of a perspective of how I think about the issue of raising the children. At the end of the day, the children are the future of the Citadel, so they have to be taken care of properly. If you like this or other episodes, please subscribe at thegaia.co so that you don't miss the next episodes. Until next time.